Good morning, it's Jason Caine from Bayside, Oaks. Thanks so much for tuning in to our Refuel devotional this morning. Recently, my family, back in March, bought our very first family pet. We decided to get a dog and we named him Geo because we're from the state of Georgia and the first three letters of Georgia are G-E-O. This little dog is no more than 7 pounds and he's been running around our house giving us a whole lot of joy, but we have one problem. The one problem is this, that my little boy is terrified of the dog. As a matter of fact, what he does, he hops around the house from chair to chair, from cushion to cushion, doing the best he can to keep his feet off the floor because he's afraid of this little 7-pound sweet puppy. Whenever my son's outside, if the dog wants to come outside, he runs inside. He does all he can to stay away from this treacherous little bitty sweet puppy. One day last week while I was home, I was over him being afraid of the dog and I told him, come on over to the room. We're gonna get over this fear today. We walked into the room, he was terrified. I set him down, I sat right next to him, and I told him we were gonna let the dog sniff his feet. The dog started sniffing his feet, and about 10 seconds into it, my son reached over to the dog and said, "Oh, I think I finally get it." His fear was immediately gone because he sat down with his father and he was comforted and he knew that everything would be okay. And the fear that he had was completely irrational. Many people, like my son, including myself, have fears that are irrational. We're afraid to confront and face the very thing that God has put in our life that would give us comfort if we would just confront and face it. Fear is a very real thing. While we all may not have the same fears, we all have fears. For my son, that dog represented all of the fears that he could ever have in his life, but when he sat down with his father, immediately those fears went away. We're told in Isaiah 41:10 to fear not. It is one thing to be told to fear not, to not have fear, but it's another thing for us to know the reason why we aren't to fear. Isaiah 41 goes on to say, "Fear not, for I am with you." The reality for all of us is when we have fears, we have to remind ourselves that the God above us is with us, and like a loving father, he will sit with us as we confront the fears we face in our lives. This morning, my simple challenge to you is this: whatever has been scaring the living daylights out of you, face it. Just like I sat down with my son, God will sit down with you as you face your fears. Perhaps you've been dealing with the fear of getting your marriage back in order. I know it can be scary to face and have difficult conversations with your spouse, but if you face that fear, God will be with you and you can get over what you're facing. Perhaps it's your finances, that you've never come up with a financial plan, that you've never taken a look at your credit because you are fearful. Perhaps you should face it today and know that God will be with you. Maybe it's another relationship that you've been harboring bitterness and unforgiveness around. Maybe you should face that fear. I don't know what your fear is, but what I do know is that you can hold on to the promise from Isaiah 41 that you do not have to fear because God is with you. Just like my son sat down with me and was forced to do so, I believe today God is challenging you to sit down with him as you face your fears, and he'll give you comfort in the midst of the confrontation. Thanks so much for tuning in. Have an excellent Friday.